Hello again, everybody. This time, I'm back with a mission which one of you requested. The Awakening of Stormrage, the third chapter of the Night Elf campaign. I wasn't at all surprised by the request. The mission is a fairly tricky one, because it has a quasi-time limit going on, and it's not really clear to a new player how much time you actually have, so it can be fairly stress-inducing and hard to gauge. It is fairly tricky to finish in time. Besides showing how to do that, I'll also show some secrets and tricks that I found. Story-wise, I think Tyrande, our alleged hero, will get you all up to speed fairly well. Basically, demons are threatening to destroy the world, and we should all band together against them, but the elves are stupid and vicious and are attacking the humans and orcs instead.
With Cenarius dead, it falls to us to awaken the Druids. We must recover the demigod's horn from the sacred Moonglade Isle. Only its clarion call can awaken the Druids from their slumber.
But, Priestess, the orcs have established a crude settlement upon the Isle. We'll need to fight our way through them to reach...
We really don't. It is, in fact, perfectly possible to just run through their base, taking only mild damage, and then just take out the guardians of the horn from there. But the elves, and especially Tyrande, are just fixated on killing all the humans and orcs they come across. Furion is her husband, although if you hadn't read the instruction manual, you wouldn't know that until later on.
He must be warned that the Legion has returned.
Then we'd better hurry. If the undead overtake his den before he's away...
Let us make haste, my sisters. All our hopes rest
on But, even under the threat of Armageddon, our heroine will not stoop to talking to orcs, and will even throw some casual racism at the humans in next mission cinematic. Well, our starting force is small but sufficient. And I'll summon her Flying Owl Scout to reveal a secret which I doubt many of you know about. The owl is a pretty useless spell most of the time in single player. It would be much better off if she had searing arrows instead. Alright, we've got some Dryads, which are support units, and we have some creeps to fight, but they're so weak it's not even worth looking at them. That secret shrine looks empty, but you see when I get there that it's actually guarded by several monsters. Let me have this big tree cannibalize all its lesser brethren to open a path for us, because we can't just walk between trees like normal people. I can really afford to be sloppy in these fights against the Murloc. Even if I take a ton of damage, I can heal it all for free because there's a healing fountain right nearby. You can see that I'm cranking out a lot of wisps for lumber, and I also spotted the gold mine over there, which I'm going to claim an expansion at now. A strong economy is the name of the game on this chapter. I think a lot of people underestimate how much time they have to build up, and try to rush with inadequate units. Now let's tear down these Murloc's houses. Pillage and burn. The gloves of haste that I'm carrying are not very useful, and neither are those boots of speed that I've just uncovered there. Therefore, I will sell both of those items to the store which is right up that hill. If you have fewer scrolls of healing than I do, by all means buy one now. But save one inventory slot for an important treasure. I've mentioned before that healing scrolls are great items. Okay, next up, the orcs have a small party outside their base guarding a healing fountain. I'll slaughter them and claim the fountain. Once again, I can afford to be sloppy in that fight, as long as I don't actually lose anybody, because the healing fountain is right there, so any damage is fixed up immediately. If you can't concentrate on both building up a base and microing your army, focus on building up the base. This mission is all about the economy. The most effective way to win is macro, not micro. Now, I considered teching up earlier, but I think it was worthwhile to get more lumber wisps out first. While teching up, the tree couldn't have produced all these wisps to give me wood, and I'll need a lot of that. All Night Elf units cost some wood, and my towers cost a ton. By the way, one important tip, don't stand too close to the enemy base. Otherwise, when they send out a small raiding party, their base defenders will notice that fight going on between you and the raiders, and you'll end up fighting the base defenders and getting slaughtered. Like these trees, which I have at last cleared a path through, large enough for one of my units to run in. I'm going to produce one more wisp, because you really can't have too many lumber wisps at this stage of the game, and as you can see, there really aren't many raiding parties coming out at me anyway. And then I will tech up so that I can produce ballistae. I'll need lots of siege weapons to tear through the orc base quickly. Additionally, I'm going to produce 2 more Ancients of War so that I can mass train troops. Normally you would never build more than 2 of those, but for this mission I think it's sufficient to have 3 so you can just pump out troops with the massive resources that you've gathered up during this brief lull at the beginning. We'll need a lot of guys because Tyrande is a pretty bad hero, and we have mostly bad units available. Tyrande is a priestess of the moon, and her starting skill, the owl, is worthless. So the only good thing about her is that she boosts your entire ranged army's damage. That, admittedly, is pretty good if you have a massive number of range units, so get a massive number of ranged units. I will concede, actually, that these Huntresses are quite good units, but those are really our only good ones. Unless you know what you're doing, it's pretty hard to press through this largest base quickly. We have to make up in quantity what we lack in quality of units. One other trap I think people could fall into this mission is building too many Dryads. Dryads are pretty cool support units, but they have about half the DPS of an archer, which is already not that impressive. The main thing that's good about them is they have this ability called Abolish Magic, which can automatically dispel enemy buffs and debuffs. That's pretty solid. But 3 Dryads like you start off with is plenty for the time being. So unless you lose one of those, I wouldn't even build an Ancient of Lore until later on. You don't need more than 3. Now, if you watched my previous videos, you probably know that the reason I haven't been getting more troops is that I'm close to my upkeep threshold. If I cross 40 population, then I end up taking a large penalty to my gold gathering. As I've said before, it's efficient to build up the gold first and then jump all the way to the next population threshold. That's why I've got those 3 barracks, so I can mass produce troops and minimize the amount of time where I'm taking a penalty on gold income, but don't have a large army to show for it. And I'm also saving some of the population room that I do have to build 1 siege weapon once I've teched up, and also to produce more lumber wisps so that I can get more towers. Towers, as I mentioned before, are quite useful because they take up no population room but provide valuable DPS. So get creative with it, just like in Age of Mythology. I expect their raiding party to show up fairly soon. I'm going to task my next few wisps to come over here where I'll eventually build towers with them. And I'll build just 1 siege weapon, which is the perfect support for Tyrande claiming that item in the secret spot that I mentioned before. Once the first raiding party has come and been defeated, I'll have time to go claim that treasure. No other unit is a good choice for fighting there, because anything except a siege weapon or Tyrande can get possessed. Which not only means you permanently lose the unit, it also means that the unit turns and fights against you. Avoid that. Don't spend your money training units for the enemy. So turning a wisp into one of the ancient type buildings consumes the wisp, which frees up its population room. So I can just keep producing a wisp at 39 population, go to 40, turn it into a tree, and then produce another wisp. I plan to get a mass of about 4 to 5 of these fairly powerful Night Elf towers, and then before the big push into the enemy base, I will pull them out and make them fight in my towers. That way I wipe out most of their base defenders while taking minimal casualties myself, and then I can just overwhelm their base, when they have nothing and I have my whole army more or less intact, and healed up by the fountain potentially. Okay, here's the raiding party. Now, as I mentioned, don't get too far in. You must not aggro the base defense force. Oh, can't have him taking out that tower while it's building. Buildings in this game are extremely vulnerable while they're under construction. I'm not sure how smart their AI is, though. I might try building another tower now that all the grunts are distracted. I could save a few seconds of construction time that way if I build it while the battle is ongoing. Nope, they were too smart, so I'll have to cancel it to get my money back before it gets destroyed. And I'll replace it once he goes down. Well, as you can see, that was quite an easy fight. So I'll get Tyrande healed up, and then I'll send her back to the base to take care of that hidden shrine that I've uncovered the path to. About 5 towers, I think, is optimal. More than that might be too great an expenditure of time and resources for the temporary benefit that it offers. I'm just watching Tyrande's health bar tick up now. And for that matter, my gold amount tick up. I have a decent stockpile now. 1,000 gold is probably sufficient to start building up in this case. The wood is what I'm short on, really. Without lumber, I can't mass produce Glaive Throwers, so I'll just build a few Glaive Throwers mixed in with the other kinds of units that I want. A balanced force is good here. Some Huntresses to tank, some archers for basic DPS, some Glaive Throwers to shred the enemy buildings. All benefit from Tyrande's aura. So, Tyrande will lead the way here, and she'll tank the enemy monsters while the Glaive Thrower provides DPS from the rear. It has massive range. The Night Elves used to have sensible ballistae, by the way, but in the expansion they changed them to the stupid and cartoonish Glaive Throwers. They throw giant ninja stars, which Warcraft 3 would have us believe are called glaives. Besides being a very silly cartoonish thing, that's not even what a glaive is. Considering that their stats are basically the same, I don't see what the point of the whole change was. Likewise with the orcs replacing their catapult with the more or less identical demolisher. Warcraft 3 is of course a very cartoonish game, and that's fine if you like that aesthetic. I don't personally, but I won't say that's a problem with the game, it's just, I don't share that. One thing that is unfortunate is that when the Extended Edition came out, besides retroactively putting in Glaive Throwers instead of ballistae throughout the original campaign, they also removed ballistae and catapults from the map editor, so you can't place them anymore yourself, you have to use the silly looking versions. But enough about that. As you saw, I just produced some moonwells so I can jump up to the next population threshold and get a mass size army. And I just keep producing troops steadily, a few Huntresses next I think. This consumable that I found, by the way, the Resurrection Scroll, is an amazingly powerful item. It emulates the potentially game-winning ultimate spell of the Paladin hero, reviving up to 6 of your ground units. That is absolutely fantastic. By all means hold on to this for the very difficult final chapter. Looks like I was a few seconds late on building those moonwells, so there's going to be 10 or so seconds here where I can't really train the troops, although I would like to. That's not too bad though. I've still got more than 10 minutes left. The total amount of time for the mission is about 20 minutes. Well, I have a big enough army now that I should start making different control groups out of them. I think I'll have the Huntresses, my tanks in one group. Siege units should be in a group of their own, so it's easy to micro them to attack buildings, and to avoid having their splash damage hit your own guys. And Tyrande and all the range units who will want to have focus fire will be in their own group. If anything, I think I'm a little bit short on archers at this point. I should produce a few more of them. The Glaive Throwers do provide some decent ranged DPS support, though. Well, good enough, it's go time. I'll maneuver and bring my siege weapons to the fore. As I mentioned, what I want to do is aggro them out of their base and into my tower mass. So I'll have my very long-range Glaive Throwers attack their tower, which should pull in their defenders piecemeal to fight me. And it lets me pull back easily and then ambush them with my archers and huntresses. I can even keep the benefit of the healing fountain. As you can see, they're going to keep joining the defense piecemeal, another advantage. I do need to avoid letting them destroy my siege weapons. Those are slow to replace, and they determine how fast I'll cut through the enemy base after winning this battle. Losing archers or huntresses isn't really important. That lightning shield debuff is pretty nasty. It makes the unit who has it do damage to all of the people around him, friend or foe. Having Dryads to auto-fix that is great. Okay, I see their hero coming. He has very good DPS, and he can also create these illusions that tank pretty well too. So I need to figure out which one of these guys is real. Only the real one does damage, but that can be hard to notice in a busy fight. Aha! That's the real one there. So I target him, he realizes he's being targeted, so he spawns new illusions to confuse me again. Ooh, one of their stun traps went off there. I got a little bit sloppy about controlling those. You have plenty of time to destroy them before they get activated. But they really don't matter much at this point. Okay, the real one is down. Onward to their base. I have a good number of siege weapons, so I can tear through them quite quickly. And I can pick up my Searing Arrows ability for Tyrande. It's an expensive and inefficient DPS boost, but the alternative is getting a better owl, and that's worthless. Don't forget to train more troops, of course. I'm going to build even more siege at this point to minimize the amount of time where their base is still active. I need to get through with enough time to wipe out a few mini-bosses. I think people kind of get panicked not knowing how much time to estimate for that. But 40 trees left is almost 8 minutes. That's really plenty of time as long as you don't get bogged down in their base. Their orc burrows, by the way, become somewhat powerful towers once their peons garrison into them. You'll see me take some pretty hefty damage from those. I'll throw out a healing scroll. Try to destroy their stun traps if you can before they become armed and dangerous. Oh, and you might be tempted to go attack their altar directly to stop their hero from being revived, but it's too deep in their town, I don't think it's worth it. Not to mention he'll revive with too little mana to spawn more mirror images, and no supporting army, so he's really not that big a threat the second time around. If you followed my guide so far, you can get sloppy at this point. I can easily rebuild any archers or huntresses or dryads who die. And besides, I hate these filthy elves anyway. I'm tempted to run back for some healing at the fountain, but that really might not be worth the disruption. I think I'll build an Ancient of Lore so I can build another Dryad or two at this point. They'll be more useful in the upcoming section than they were hitherto. The upcoming enemies use a fair number of spells, which the Dryads can either cure the debuffs from or just are immune to the damage of. Furthermore, the upcoming enemies tend to consist of a few guys who do powerful DPS individually. So the Dryad's poison, which slows the attack speed of the person who that Dryad is hitting, becomes quite useful. Okay, the Orc hero will be out soon, but if he's isolated, as I said, no big deal. When he has an army and he can be doing damage while they tank for him, that's a big deal. He does move pretty fast though. I can't let him get to my Glaive Throwers. As I mentioned, when he comes back from the dead, he's short on mana, so he can't use his very expensive illusion spell. That spell, unless it's been buffed since I played, is utter garbage and never ever sees play in multiplayer. It's all about the Windwalk. These burrows put out some pretty hefty DPS, but the nice thing is that they're not resistant to my archer's attacks like most buildings are. There we go, the next shipment of Glaive Throwers arrived a few seconds ago. With 8, I can really wreck his base in seconds. And they'll be able to blast down the Guardians too. None of them have armor types that resist siege weapons, as far as I can remember. In fact, this base is taking me longer to destroy than I would have expected, really. I should probably have got more aggressive with my Huntresses and so forth, and just took whatever casualties I had to blitz it down faster. Having come this far and kept them alive, though, might as well go get them healed up now. With that last true-producing building down, there are no threats left to the Glaive Throwers, so they can work unattended. As I mentioned, you don't actually need to destroy the enemy town. You don't even really technically need to attack it. You could just take a big army and just ram your way through. You'll take some casualties that way, but you will make it. with some micro, that force that pushes through the enemy base can then fight the Guardians and win you the map. But if you're an inexperienced player and are not comfortable with the kind of micro that would be required to take out those Guardians with a smallish force, I wouldn't try that. I would do it this way. As you can see, I detonated some wisps there to make more population room for more soldiers. The Glaive Throwers have now served their purpose, by the way, so at this point it's okay when they die. I'd like to say that this kind of very aggressive style where I don't mind troops dying is not my normal playstyle. It doesn't really come naturally to me. I'm normally very perfectionistic, but it is optimal for this mission. It's best to just force your way through fast with a big army and not focus on the details. I forget if there's anything in those crates. I'll check them.
I heed the voice of a
Oh, healing wards. Those are really good, actually. I've been thinking about buying another scroll of healing, but I'll take those wards instead, actually. Alright, let's roll. I have about 20 trees and therefore about 4 minutes left to clear out the mini-bosses guarding the horn. I have no idea why they try to kill us. I don't know what they are. I don't know why we don't talk to them. They look like Cenarius. They seem like they'd be intelligent beings, but whatever. We just need to fight them to the death for some reason because they won't fight the undead nearby. They will only attack us. First, there's the fire mini-boss. As you would expect from a fire-themed guy, he puts people to sleep. Luckily, the Dryads are here to fix that nonsense. You can, of course, purge it yourself by manually attacking the sleeping person, but that's a lot of work. I'm not really sure what the elements of the Warcraft 3 universe are, to be honest. Here we've kind of got Final Fantasy or Elder Scrolls style fire, frost, and lightning. The orcs though seem to talk about storm, earth, and fire, and the humans have water elementals, and I guess we see some fire elemental heroes, but that's about it.
Someone threatens the
Is there
wild.
trouble?
Possibly the trashiest item in the game right there. All the treasures in this area are just terrible. That one will give you +1 agility, if you can believe it. That's +1 damage and +1% attack speed. And I mentioned a few times how useless powering up your hero's attack even with better items is.
So be it.
Speaking of mostly useless DPS, I might as well turn on my Searing Arrows ability now, I guess. That's 10 damage extra per shot, reduced by armor. I tried to pull out some of the enemies, but not others there. Didn't work. This guy has some ice damage area of effect attacks, as you can see. He also buffs his guys with icy armor. The ice armor thing, though, is mostly irrelevant because none of my guys attack in melee. Not sure they thought that particular buff through for this scenario. Against attacking melee units, it matters a lot more because they get slowed down. These ghostly looking things that we're fighting look a bit like Cenarius, by the way, if you haven't played through the Orc campaign and seen it. He's the god who the Orcs killed whose horn we're trying to retrieve here. I don't know what his horn is doing here. And I don't really know what relation these guys have to him. Alright, let's blitz down this last guy. There are some more owlbears hiding in that cave, I'm sure. You can see that the Glaive Throwers really put the hurt on him. He's got some more area of effect blasts. And so does the big owlbear. I'll pull these fragile archers back before they get instant killed by another one of those. And bam, the last of them have been reduced to bloody pulp by the Glaive Throwers. So there you go, I won with several minutes left to spare. So if you've been struggling with this mission, I'd recommend you tackle it along these general lines at the very least.
Last, the horn of Cenarius. Now we can awaken Furion.
You're about to see Furion riding in some kind of weird goat creature that I guess was sleeping in the Barrow Den with him. He didn't have that in the original campaign, it was added in the expansion, so then they just retroactively put it here with the remaster. I certainly have no objection to that whatsoever. I wonder if they improved his speed to go with him being on a goat thing instead of on foot. Furion kind of has a habit of just saying, "I am angry," or things like that, rather than expressing it through his acting for whatever reason. I suppose I'm kind of like that myself. And this small band of pitiful treants just overwhelms that entire undead army, including the Tier 3 abominations. And we all lived happily ever after. In a real match, those treants are not very good fighters. Decent tanks, though. Well, that's that. Let me know if there are any missions that you'd like to see me tackle. Or any scenarios or custom maps for Warcraft 3 or things like that. I'm open to ideas. I've got my own too, of course. But for now, have a great day, everyone.